Hi, I'm Jill Grimes. I'm going to show you guys just a few examples of some cut paper pieces that I've made. I've been making them for quite a while now, and but I'm just going to show you a couple of different ways I've been sort of approaching that, and then I'll show you guys some materials that I would recommend, and then a little bit of the process of making them, so that if you wanted to try, you could, of course, try it yourself. These are combinations of cut paper and painting on the paper. So in this case, the one on the left, there's several. It's cut Bristol, which is a type of paper. It's a little bit thicker than regular drawing paper. And then the overlay on top is the drawing itself. So everything is cut paper in this case. I've just sort of cut out the drawing, which is the layer on top. This is the same. The three layers in the back are painted directly on the paper, and then this layer in the front that's green is cut paper. So again, just kind of thinking about different ways of integrating more two-dimensional considerations, and three, I think, can be quite interesting for a project like this. Each one of these has elements of the others. So you might find, for example, the background of this one, there's this sort of dark shape here. This is also repeated here. And we'll see some of these grasses, for example, might come up, the shape or form or drawing of them might come up somewhere else. So this drawing on the far left is acrylic and gouache, and it doesn't have any cut paper elements. The one in the middle, it's actually a dark green paint, just acrylic paint on top of blue, ultramarine blue. And then the white is a sort of more delicate type acknowledgement of the shape of the flower. So that's what that is in the center. And then this one on the far right is all cut paper. So it was overlapping drawings that I used tracing paper to repeat some of the drawings. So a line drawing on top of another line drawing. I just wanted to show you guys a couple of different ways that I've been sort of thinking about this the last couple of years, and we'll just go right into materials. Obviously, paper is a major consideration. I would suggest just getting an inexpensive pad of watercolor paper. It doesn't have to be very thick. It could be, any kind of quality of paper will be appropriate, but I like to use watercolor paper that's about 90 pounds, which is the thickness of the paper. I also like to use Canson mixed media paper, which is just really nice drawing paper. It takes a lot of abuse. It can take wet media and dry, and it's really versatile. So I like to use that. I'd suggest getting a pad of Bristol. It doesn't have to be Strathmore, but it could be any of the brand, any brand or quality that you see. I'll talk about what that's good for in a minute. It'd be a good idea to have a pad of tracing paper as well. Again, just sort of anything that makes sense to you as far as the process. A pad of palette paper is good. This is just a cheap pad of disposable palettes, or any kind of surface that you could use to mix paint on, like a styrofoam sort of meat container from the store would be fine, or maybe a plastic palette, or anything that it is easy to work with. Will work well. There's no reason to not get colored papers. You can get different quality papers that are already obviously a color, so you don't have to prepare them. You could just start drawing and cutting right into them, and they're in varying qualities. But if you're at your art supply store, you'll find a lot of, again, different qualities of different color and textures of paper. I would suggest, if you're going to be making a lot of cuts, getting a cutting mat, this is I think about $10. I've had this one for 20 years, and they come in different sizes, and it sets up a really nice surface for you to cut into. Scissors are great, obviously, pencil and an eraser. This is a 2B, but whatever you like to draw with, it doesn't matter. This is just a regular X-Acto. I use just a regular X-Acto knife, and they usually come with number 11 blades. Sometimes you might want to grab an extra pack of those, so that they're always sharp, because this makes a huge difference. I like to use the number 11, but you may find a blade that is more appropriate to what you're doing, of course. Always good to have a straight edge, a ruler around. And then I have all, just all kinds of sizes and shapes of brushes. I like soft bristle watercolor brushes. These are just acrylic bristles, and they'll be good for watercolor, for acrylic, or any wet media, any water-based media. And again, I don't think you don't need to buy, if you're buying all this stuff for the first time, don't get really expensive things unless you want to. I also wouldn't get the cheapest thing you can find, but get what your budget allows for, and just so that you can play and sort of feel comfortable with making a mess, until you're really used to working with it. You need some paint, of course, if you'd like to paint the paper to prepare your own paper, which would be, in this case, this is just a piece of watercolor paper. Again, not very expensive. I bought a pad of it, and I chose, so I could choose the colors I wanted to work with. I have been painting these. This is with just a wash of acrylic paint. So obviously, if you're gonna do that, buy acrylic paint. You need some kind of glue. I use acrylic gel medium, which is this one right here. This is gloss, but you could also use matte, and you're using it just as a way to mount the layers of cut paper. You could also use just Elmer's glue. White glue is fine. If you prefer to use a glue stick, you could. I find this a little bit tough to work with because sometimes it damages the layers. If you have really delicate layers of paper that you're gluing to each other, this is a little bit awkward because of the process of actually getting it on the paper. But it's always handy to have everything around you might need. I'd also recommend, this is white paper tape. It's a little bit less sticky. I call it paper tape. Sometimes it's called, it's just a pH neutral artist tape. It's usually white in the arts and craft supply stores. So it's just not quite as sticky as regular masking tape. So it's a little bit more gentle. You can use it to place layers of your cut paper. And I guess that's it. A couple of jars, something that you can hold water in, especially if you're going to use acrylic paint as part of the process. So those are the basic materials, and I'll show you a couple of things as we go. Okay, so I've just put out a number of different choice of just like stages of the process for the way I would make one of these pieces. The first thing that I strongly recommend deciding is what size you want to work with. So, and I'd also recommend having the approach of making more than one at a time. So if you start with 4 or 5 different pieces of paper, then there can be an interchange between each image that you're working with, so that you're almost economizing on the information on the drawing sort of side of this. So I decide on what size, and so every part of the process will be the right scale for the page. And then I would prepare your paper. So again, like I told you guys a minute ago, this is just a watercolor paper that I wanted to have this ultramarine blue. And you might want to consider a little bit of a different sort of mark making, maybe a little bit of a texture to it. Always consider how light or dark this part of the process is. If you have a dark piece of paper, for example, then everything on top of it will need to be harmonized with that dark start in terms of what value you're working with. So after you decide, again, like what size you're going to use, you're going to make some drawings. But I would, again, prepare the paper first. Again, all I mean by that is just like literally putting paint on the paper and let it completely dry. You may want to put a little bit of weight on the paper as it's drying so that it stays flat. So just a little, like a book, to just keep the paper from curling as it dries is a good idea. Then I would set up whatever your subject is. In this case, I've been working with flowers and plants. So I have a couple of just like drawings that I did use for this project. These are on Bristol. You could do them on just a drawing paper, or you could also do them on the back of any of your prepared paper. So if you, again, like if you wanted to make a drawing and then reuse it multiple times, I would suggest doing that on Bristol. So this, for example, is on this line drawing of this is on Bristol itself. And then I made a copy of it by using tracing paper. So just putting the tracing paper down, tracing around the line drawing, the original line drawing. And then I would just flip that over onto a piece of white paper, go back over your drawing, then you can cut it out. And in this case, this is the cutout version of this flower. I like to do this because I can then take it and see how it works just by itself in terms of composition. Maybe I want to see how it works with a different cutout in terms of density. Maybe I want to see what it looks like in different contexts. Maybe with maybe I'll use it twice. This is the same flower, for example. This one is from this drawing, and then this is the cutout. So I cut this out and I put it here, and I just traced around it with just regular pencil, and then painted that. This is black, obviously. And I did all that on top of this blue. So that's a way to kind of recycle all the work you did to make this drawing, so that you make a drawing and then you can reuse that shape multiple times. So that's one thing I really like to do. And if you have again, if the paper is all the same size, then you know that everything is going to fit together a certain way. There's just all kinds of options, of course. Another one would be is if you did do your drawing on the back of a colored piece of paper, then you could just cut it out, directly from from the drawing. So and then you have it in blue. Here, sometimes I will make a painting of I'll make a painting of a plant or a flower, and then I don't like it. So instead of I don't like, there might be something wrong with some of the surrounding information. So I might just cut it out of the painting. And then I have a painted set of these flowers, which is, obviously this is a little bit of a different language than than a really flat sense of that cut paper. But that's something that's really fun, I think, and interesting about this kind of process is you can just keep adding and interchanging different types of information as you go. This is for another way of just considering recycling. This is the same shape from the same drawing. I just flipped this over again on a piece of Bristol and traced around it, and then painted this and cut it out in this shape. So that's a way to sort of develop a vocabulary that you're going to use for your project. I usually use 3 or 4 different types of flowers in this case. So different sort of shapes and densities. Some things have big shapes and some have more delicate forms and shapes that you're sort of considering. So it's good to have a mix of different sort of options to sort of build your final image. Sometimes I would like to do a more intricate kind of cutout. And again, this is just with just cutting this on a mat with an X-Acto blade. This is a couple of different drawings. I just cut out the line drawing instead of having that's just sort of concentrating on the outside edges of the flower. I actually cut out the lines that I drew to describe that form. So that in this case, this was a couple of drawings that I overlapped, and then I cut it out. I cut out any of the white and left, for example, the line. So that linear kind of information that was describing. And these are great to work with because if in combination with something that has a little bit more of a solid form. And if once you have several different types of cut paper pieces, again, you can move them around, see what might work with what, maybe, trying different color sort of combinations. Sorry, you guys can't see this very well. Different color combinations, different considerations of value and shapes, and see how things sort of go together. So it's really quite fun. And once you get all of your pieces cut, you just start moving things around, trying different background spaces, different colors, values, and forms until you're happy with what you got. Gluing these down is there's no major trick to it. I'll often take a little glue, or in this case, acrylic gel medium, again, is what I use. And I would just, I would map out exactly where you want the layers. And again, you pretty much have to go from the bottom up. So again, this layer is painted, just to review, and this is your cutout. So the white Bristol cutout. And then take a little bit of tape to tape it down in place so that obviously it doesn't move, which is really frustrating if it does. So I recommend doing that. I'd start from the top, and again, be pretty careful of your more delicate parts of any of these cutouts so that you don't damage that. Just give it a little bit of just a little bit of pressure. Sometimes I'll just put a little, I don't know, put something down here to kind of just help stabilize that. And then I would go, once you have this taped down, lift it from the bottom, just dip your brush. I get a small brush, watercolor brush in the glue or gel medium, if that's what you're using. Just pour a little out onto your palette, that disposable paper palette or disposable or whatever palette you have. And just dip in there, and just on the biggest, try to get the edges, but start from like place on the cutout that you have the most surface area, and sort of go out to the edges. You don't need to go all the way to every edge. Just be really delicate and sensitive to you don't want too much glue on this, because you don't want the paper to have to absorb all of that. So you don't really need a lot of glue to get everything to stick. So again, just going with as you're gluing, I'd start at the tops, especially if you have these sort of delicate spaces, and then put it down. You could, after you glue it, I would not put tape on it. I'd cover it with a piece of tracing paper or parchment, or something that is a little bit less absorbent. And then you could put a book or a couple of books just to weigh it down, so that can be drying in a consistent way as you are gluing, down toward the bottom. And then once you get everything glued, I'd put a couple of sheets of Bristol on top, just to kind of, encourage the paper to be flat as it's drying. In this case, just plain Bristol. And then a couple of books. Sometimes I'll use a gallon of water just as weight, or water bottles. Water is obviously very heavy. And then you're good. So you could do this a number of times, obviously. Once this is dry, it needs to be completely dry. So again, so you're not introducing too much water into the paper. And then you can add on your second layer. And I just keep doing this until I've never layered up more than 3 or 4 layers, but it depends on the kind of density you're looking for, but that's it. Then after everything is dry, I try to store the pieces also in a place where they can be flat and have a little bit of weight on them, just to, again, keep encouraging the paper to be flat, because it will want to curl a little bit as it dries. That's the process. Again, and you could do this with any kind of paper that would accept glue, a little bit of water-based media. So the paper can't be too thin. Again, 90-pound paper is the least thick that I would use. So again, I would just encourage you to make many different types of, in this case, flowers, or if you, whatever subject you're working with, give yourself a lot of different ways of describing that form, and then just start putting them together and see what works, and then glue it down, and you're good to go.